Say to all of you viewers of Equinoxe Television, it's 6 p.m. in Douala, and it's time for the news. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. Our major stories this evening, viewers. Circulation was paralyzed early today on the Tiko Mutengene Highway as inhabitants of over 8 quarters in Mutengene erected barricades on the road. The angry population complained they have been without electricity for several months now, and the situation was becoming already unbearable. The SEO for the FACO division, Young Mekala, calmed the people and promised the issue would be resolved before next week come to a close. Our reporter Rex Afan was in Mutengene. He will be telling us more about the grievances of the people in this news edition. And also, petroleum experts have advised that a new national oil refinery should be constructed in Limbe rather than spending billions of francs CFA in attempts to reconstruct the old structure which was ravaged by fire. The experts say that will save the economy and go a long way to reduce fuel prices in Cameroon. We will listen to them in this newscast. And over to Nigeria, President Bola Tinubu receives the over 100 released students of a Catholic school who were kidnapped and kept in captivity in Nigeria for over 2 weeks. Viewers, those are our lead stories. Stay with us on details in just a moment. Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for always being with us. Thank you for your usual confidence. We told you a while ago that circulation was paralyzed earlier today on the Tiko Mutengene Highway as the local population of over 8 quarters in that area erected barricades on the roads. The angry people complained they have been without electricity for over 9 months now, and the situation was already unbearable for them. The SEO for the FACO division, Young Mekala, calmed down the people and promised them that the issue would be resolved before next week comes to a close. Our reporter Rex Afan was there. He now tells us more in the report that comes up next.
They are from over 8 quarters in Mutengene, standing in the middle of the road, chanting a song that has now been so familiar in the FACO division.
This early morning, inhabitants of about 8 quarters in Mutengene moved to the streets to protest the lack of power for the past close to 10 months.
The lack of electricity has dealt them a serious blow.
What we only need is the basic necessity, like our children cannot read and there's end of year examination coming. How will they proceed with the examination? Yes. Insecurity is on the rise. Business activity is grounded. Yes. Where is the emergence by 2035? Yes. Where is the sentiment of hope?
And the troubles keep multiplying by the day.
It is through this land that we live. We are having our children that have been driven away from school. There are some of our mothers, they do foolery, they do Yahoo, go Sam, Alaska, you go store. Where are you sending those people to?
The senior divisional officer for FACO, Young Mekala, has promised them that between now and Tuesday, the lights which he says went because of a deficit in transformers and due to poor connections will return.
The women were here, all of them, sitting at the roadside until the Dio of Tiko came up here to come and play with them. They could not hear because they have been having the feelings for their children. Many are doing business with light. Since there's no light, they cannot do anything. They cannot pay their bills. They cannot cope up, and there is insecurity. So they are crying for the government to see into it. And that is why actually, as of now that we are talking here, the SDO of FACO have been here. So he has come, he has promised them to go home peacefully, that on Tuesday there will be light.
This problem, which is almost becoming the identity of the FACO division, has prompted the local population not to trust the words of local authorities.
Let's say, let us Tuesday, let go. If Tuesday no come, let no come. We never go. I don't hear the moment no time.
They say they will return to the streets if they don't see lights by Tuesday.
Thank you, Rex. Meantime, circulation is now fluid while waiting for a solution to be sought to the problem of the people of Mutengene. Now we talk something else. More and more pupils in Cameroon have been deprived of education because they do not have a birth certificate. To address this phenomenon, the government is stepping up efforts through a special operation to establish and deliver birth certificates to about 1 million school children across the national territory. Innocent Asia reports.
Thousands of children in Cameroon are still unable to complete their education today because they are not in possession of the birth certificate. Out of 100 children who get into primary school, only 75% of this number gets to complete this cycle for several years now. 25% who do not have this vital document are pinned on the same spot.
C'est généralement les enfants qui n'ont pas d'acte de naissance.
It is forced to fill the gap and give the children equal opportunities that the state launches the second phase of the special operation to establish and deliver birth certificates to underprivileged children. Out of about 1 million children that the operation targets to grant them birth certificates, there are just about 50% children, that is to say about 533,000 children, who have their documents deposited at the level of the jurisdictions.
C'est déjà une très bonne avancée.
Despite this, some hurdles still exist.
C'est pour cette raison que
It's for this reason that the Minister of State, Minister of Justice, prolonged the operation to the 15th of January 2026. But it is not on this date that documents should be deposited at the various jurisdictions. Documents have to be deposited until December 15th to permit smooth conduct of the operation.
Au 15 décembre, pour que ces opérations puissent se dérouler.
Parents are urged to respect this deadline so that such an opportunity does not pass by. Agents from the Ministry of Justice are on the field to ensure that the job is being done at the jurisdictions at the normal pace required.
And gender-based violence has been on an increase in Cameroon for some time now, from physical and social violence to online threats and attacks on women, which has left many in isolation and depression. This is the reason for a workshop that brought together stakeholders in the town of Marua to brainstorm on possible solutions to gender-based violence. Mala Glory has details.
Persistent insecurity, frequent floods, drought, which has affected thousands of families, are the realities of the people of the far north region of Cameroon. And also the fact that less attention is given to the victims is a great concern to humanitarian experts, including the deterioration of mental health, particularly among women and girls. In an already fragile region, gender-based violence has intensified from physical, economic, and social assault to digital violence, online threats, or even unauthorized dissemination of intimate images, unseen attacks, which leads to fear, isolation, and depression.
La santé mentale, le bien-être, c'est optimiser la qualité de vie des personnes en situation normale dans leur quotidien, dans leur vie de tous les jours.
To better fight these challenges, a workshop was organized in Marwa, bringing together administrative authorities, academics, community leaders, and humanitarian organizations with the aim of analyzing gender-based violence, its impact in digital protection systems.
L'objectif, c'est d'avoir une feuille de route, un calendrier et un engagement de tous les décideurs à veiller à ce que, que la santé mentale, les violences basées sur le genre de manière globale soient mis dans les priorités de l'État et que des lois soient prises, des décrets.
The workshop permitted the experts to lay the groundwork for the 2025-2026 action plan, prevention, securing digital spaces, taking appropriate physical responsibility, supporting research, and increasing involvement of men in the fight against violence. an initiative supported by the Ministry of Public Health and the University of Maroua.
Nous allions dans l'institution leur expliquer comment est-ce qu'ils peuvent aborder les aspects liés à la santé mentale ou au bien-être avec les étudiants qui viennent en stage chez eux.
Cet atelier vient à point nommé parce que ça va permettre à notre système de santé de prendre en charge vraiment les victimes.
In a context where security and climate pressure persist, experts emphasize the priority of protecting every woman's right, girl, child, whether she is threatened in her home, neighborhood, or behind a screen.
In foreign news, over 100 students of a Catholic school in Nigeria who were kidnapped by armed gunmen have been released. The school children who had been in captivity for weeks were received by the President of Nigeria. And over to Cote d'Ivoire, President Alassane Ouattara has promised a generational transition after he was re-elected for another mandate. Laura Maeru with details of those stories and more.
Nigeria Headline News focuses on the president's reception of recent free hostages, an action designed to demonstrate government commitment in the face of persistent insecurity across the country. The high-profile event underscores the ongoing challenges posed by mass kidnapping carried out by both jihadist groups and criminal gangs. The presidential meeting with the victim highlights the severity of the security crisis and the political imperative to protect both empathy for the affected families and succeed in the fight against terrorism and banditry. In Ivory Coast, President Alassane Ouattara has focused his post-electoral agenda on the commitment to generational transition. This promise, delivered upon his inauguration for the new term, signals an intent to prepare the nation's political future for a challenge in leadership. However, the commitment is viewed with some skepticism by opposition groups and analysts as it follows the contentious re-election and raises immediate questions regarding the timeline and concrete mechanism that will be employed to implement this planned political succession. And in Gabon's transitional government has ignited public debate with the introduction of a new flat rate inhabitation tax. While authorities frame the measure as a social shield and a tool to modernize cities without unduly burdening citizens, the underlying goal to the burden of national tax base and reduce reliance on oil revenues. Despite the stated aim of achieving a fair and more efficient tax system, the implementation of a new levy is generating widespread public concern regarding its potential impact on household spending power.
And now we talk sports. Few days to the kickoff of the Africa Cup of Nations AFCON. Dust is yet to settle on who will manage the indomitable Lions of Cameroon. 2 decades or 2 coaches, Pagu, David and Mark Breeze, have all published a list of 28 players for the tournament. Cameroon fixed to play against Gabon, Madagascar and Cote d'Ivoire in Group F will begin their preparation for the tournament that would be on December 15, 2025. The first preparatory meeting of the tournament will be chaired by Sports Minister Narcisse Muele Kombi. Smart Jikan Gabriel has more.
A complicated situation for Cameroon, few days to the kickoff of the Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco. As it stands, Cameroon might have 2 teams to represent the nation at the next AFCON. One from Pagu David, the Lions trainer, appointed recently by the Cameroon's Football Federation, and another set of players invited by Mark Breeze, who was appointed by the government some 2 years ago. According to sources, the Belgian tactician, who still sees himself as the head coach of the indomitable Lions, has been doing his background work relentlessly, as he already forwarded a list of 28 players to the Cameroonian authorities retained for the African Soccer Jamboree. On his list, names like Vincent Aboubakar, Michael Ngando Gandri, Andre Onana, and Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting, which were omitted by Fecafoot, appears. Unfortunately, Mark Breeze is yet to confirm if he actually sent a list to the state, but still, according to information, The Lions will officially begin their preparation for the AFCON on December 15, 2025. In the face of this confusion, the Minister of Sports and Physical Education, Chief Professor Narcis Mwole-Kombi, who has been silent since the new staff was named by Fecafoot, has scheduled a meeting to prepare for the next AFCON this Wednesday, December 10, 2025, at the Sports Complex in Yaoundé.
Thanks, Matt. And that sports piece brings us to the end of the first part of the news. Let's move on to Talking Points, viewers. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is NJI Lucas. You are a human rights defender speaking to us from Buea. Thank you, sir, for accepting to be our guests on the news this evening. And today we are discussing the recent waves of strike actions across the national territory. Recently, we've been hearing of truck drivers in Meganga who even blocked the road or the highway. And today, Mutengene, where the local population blocked the road, they were protesting against insufficient electricity provision. Now, Mr. NJI Lucas, does that somehow transcribe or portray the frustrations in the hearts of Cameroonians, these strike actions?
And good evening, it's my pleasure once more on being on Equinoxe. And like you did ask, the recent here and there strike within the Republic of Cameroon, which most see it to be coming shortly after the results of the presidential elections were proclaimed by the Constitutional Council. It's an evidence of what we observed during the campaign period, where most young Cameroonians and people in between their 60s and their 50s are expressing. If you did follow the trend during that period, you would understand. You would understand that the people expressed a lot of dissatisfaction with the present government, and it is very difficult for some members of this government to see. If you were present on the ground, you will understand. Now, let me take it from what has just happened today in Tiko, where the people came out. I saw a sea of people talking about no electricity in their area, and some were asking if they were going to spend the festive period in total darkness. Now, what is happening is just an expression of what Cameroonians have. Now, you will notice that despite the fact that the southwest region is having an armed conflict, yet the people still do not care what would happen. They have summoned their courage. They mustered the courage to express how they are dissatisfied with regards to this present situation. So it is but normal that something is on the ground. Now, when you look at the situation up at the north, if you move to Menganga, moving down on that particular stretch of road where we saw these truck drivers parked their trucks for several days and they refused not to work. It is an expression. If you notice from their points that they brought in, there were things that were now policy reforms. If you look at it, they brought in issues that had to do with policy reforms. Why? It is so because today in Cameroon, when Cameroonians get themselves caught in any act of violence towards their person, what they want to do is to go back to bring some point and to future some of these points that were not initially in line with what is happening. Now, this is how it started in 2016 in the present restive regions, wherein the people simply said, okay, we don't want this to continue within the system. There were negotiations, governors will always come out, senior divisional officers or divisional officers will come out. But in the end, when they come out, the situation is different. It deteriorates like we saw in 2016 in the present restive regions. Now, we should not forget that the northern part of this country is added to the restive regions in this country. If you take an assessment, the northern part of this country is almost becoming ungovernable. If you look at what is happening, The people come out almost at every moment to express how dissatisfied they are. This is so because the democracy in Cameroon is going through the toughest of its time. And it is not because the democracy by its nature is bad, but because those who man public offices, wherein they are supposed to serve as unifier, people who should unify the people, they are becoming more partisan, self-centered. They have forgotten about the people whom they leverage on to ascend certain offices. And these people have been abandoned to themselves. And every single opportunity they have, they want to express how dissatisfied they are with the present government.
Thank you, NJI Lucas. Now, during these protest demonstrations, we noticed that the government authorities in general are always very quick to repress the angry population and silence them, sometimes by force. Shouldn't dialogue be prioritized instead of the use of force, like in the case of Meganga, where the trucks were destroyed overnight in an attempt to clear the roads which was blocked by the protesters?
During the inaugural speech of the head of state, and you noticed that he took the position of someone who wants to bring the people back together. And when you look at what is happening on the ground, it is a bit different from what he said with regards to this. On the issue of the recent situation in Menganga where trucks were destroyed, where dialogue was abandoned, now you still go back to, it goes back to the situation in 2016 within the restive regions. Now, there was an initial dialogue. These people expressed worries. There is something the young man, so to say, who had the megaphone said, that they had it also as an opportunity. They expressed two things. One, they made the governor to understand that they do not have job security. If you listen to what he said, that they also want to be registered at the level of CNPS, which should rather be a point of concern to the present government, because it is their right that level has, which is their right. They expressed that okay, we want to register. We want that this should be done. Now, those who are managing that business, they are not government officials. These are private business people. And a Cameroonian comes to say, we want to be protected. But in the end, what happened? Their trucks were destroyed. Another thing is, they made mention of the numerous control posts which they identify as posts where it is not only the issue of document, but it is the issue of cash. Now, that is also an opportunity for the state of Cameroon to rather see that there are people who are involved in bribery and corruption. It's an opportunity. The government rather would have looked at this and said, okay, let us monitor this situation and see. But what did the government do? They made promises. And if they did not agree on that day, maybe the truck drivers had it in mind that they were going to maybe shift from that position if at all it was extreme the previous day to see what to do the next day. But for the fact that the act that was done was carried out at night, it tells you that someone who truly wants to do what is right will not carry out such an action at night. And it's unfortunate that from the allegations emanating from that end, one person died, another person is critically in the hospital. And we have not heard any position of the government with regards to this allegation to clear the air with regards to that no one died. So on the aspect of dialogue, we are within the period of the government that talks about dialogue. And the head of state was so prominent in that speech. What was so prominent in the speech was, in his inaugural speech, was that he has asked the elites to continue. If you look at what he said, if you go in deeply, in other words, let the people within their respective areas incorporate a system of dialogue with the people if there is a problem. And somewhere today I said, if only he knows that the ministers that he has co-opted to work with the people, they are seeing themselves as people who have conquered the people, but not servants of the republic. Because that particular action, it is not the right thing. It wasn't the right thing.
Now, NJI Lucas, before we go, let's now look at our Cameroonian context, the socio-political situation of the country. Are there no other ways, or are there some other ways that Cameroonians, angry Cameroonians, can express their worries other than through public protests or demonstrations?
That question, Annabella, is a bit tricky. Now, under normal circumstances, as enshrined in our law, people have the right to express their grievances as they would have declared that they want to do so. Another way could be that the representatives of the people could carry the messages of the people. I'll go by what Senator Moki said in 2019 when they were about to bring in the bilingualism law. There was something he said. Then he asked the question that to those of people like him who live in the region, if they have to go back, what would they tell their people? That is to tell you that he receives the complaints of people and he brings it further. So in this case, it is normally supposed to be members of parliament or the political elite or the regional representatives of the particular area. But what is happening? The lack of trust. When it's brought to most people, when such a situation is brought to most people, the worry is that it is not addressed as it ought to be. And so it has caused the people to think towards that direction. Take the case today in Mutengene, in Tiko subdivision. The people, some had gone to the electricity company as an individual, but nothing was done. But because they came out today, the divisional officer for Tiko was present. So you see that authorities in Cameroon think that it is only when people move towards that level. But it is not good because it can degenerate, like we had a case in 2016 that degenerated, and today we are in an armed conflict for over 9 years counting. So it is important for the government officials to know that dialogue is good and they should not allow people to get to that point where they become so burnt up in their anger to express the way forward for their plight.
Thank you so much, NJI Lucas, for being my guest tonight, and thank you for your time. Viewers, thank you so much for being with us. See you again tomorrow, same time, God willing. For now, it's bye-bye from us.